May God grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that being rooted and grounded in love, you may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with the fullness of God. Amen. Well, that's my prayer for you today, that we will go out of here this morning feeling more filled than when we came in. That we will know that great love that Paul talked about. He talked about it in terms of height and length and depth and breadth. So I thought, how can I urge that in something that we can understand today? Those of you who've got children, and even if your children have grown up now and are quite old, you'll know that children come in quite small packages, don't they? You buy fast food and it's either medium large or extra large. Children only come in one size. They're small, little. And yet, out of all relation to their size, they can say things to us that are quite devastating, can't they? I remember, those of you who are men know this. If your little son said to you one day, "Dad, I've just made something," and you turn around with a great deal of trepidation because you know that what you're going to survey is a scene of total chaos. Because children have this thing, they want to get all this stuff that they're so excited about into this place there, and it doesn't matter how they do it, they're just trying to get it there. And even when I worked with my mom, because I used to watch my mom in the kitchen, and that was so exciting to see her take all these ingredients and take them and make them something else. Children get very excited about that. You take all this stuff and you turn it into something else, and that's a really exciting thing. But I'm sure that it made my mum's heart go cold when I used to say, "Mum, can I help?" And so she got to help in ways that she could sort of control. I remember one of the first things that my mother used to get me to do was she'd say, just adjust the scales to make sure that they're set correctly. You see, those scales aren't set correctly, are they? And when you put the lid on, it might still need a little bit of twisting around. And she'd get me just to sort of to do this little button at the back, so you've got them lined up. And that's how my mum would start to help me to be part of this thing called making a cake. And of course there are other things that used to go on, like measuring. So I have to measure out some flour and help to see on these scales how much flour is needed, how much butter and sugar, and things like that. Because you can't just take stuff and turn it into other stuff without measuring it, without weighing it, without putting it into certain quantities. But that's not how children are. Children don't see things quite that way. Alan Hesketh, who is the parishioner at Yelvertoft, he tells funny stories. And he said one day the maths teacher at school, when they were boys, the maths teacher was telling the class how to use slide rules. Do you remember those? My mind still goes into a fog of slide rules. This is when we deal like fractions, like halves and quarters and eighths, but thousands of an inch. And so the teacher was explaining about slide rules. He said, right then in class, he said, how many thousands are there in an inch? And this baffled, blustered little boy said, there must be millions of them, like you say. But we learn as children, don't we, to count, to analyse, to quantify, to appraise. But that's not how children start off. They start off with all this stuff that they're so excited about, and they just want to get it over there as quickly as possible and make other stuff. Notice that when they do colouring in. They don't keep between the lines. They just want to get all that colour out of the felt tip or the pencil or the crayon onto the page. It's not about keeping it within the lines. Do you see how a child, I'm encouraging you to think how a child would think. It's just too exciting. There's a sense of being unrestrained. There's a sense of just wanting to get it out there. That is what Paul has been describing in that reading. He says the love of God is so long and high and wide and deep and broad that you're not going to get to the end of it. I just want to get all this stuff out and show you what it's like. And after he met Jesus on the Damascus Road, that was pretty much the story of his life. He travelled what we call now that's the Mediterranean seaboard, up into what is now, in Paul's days, called Asia Minor, today it's called Turkey, and on into Europe. And wherever he went, whoever he met, he took this message of God's love for the world. It was just too much to keep in. He was just like a boy. He was like a child. He couldn't restrain it. He couldn't measure it in sequences of ounces or millimetres or whatever. He couldn't get all that love into something like a measuring jug and say, well, there it is. That he said, it's just, this is God's love. And every heart I meet, I'm going to pour some of that love in, because there's so much of it to go around. You know, mothers, children can devastate you, even when they're very little. Just 3 words. Mommy, I love you. It changes everything, doesn't it? And even now, at this stage, when children can't articulate, can't say those words, it's held there somewhere waiting for future days when those words will be formed and the first days they're ever spoken. You'll never forget, will you? Because that's what love does. It's reckless. It's unabandoned. You can't measure it. You can't quantify it. I want you to think about this thought today, mothers, and all of us here today. The world is trying to tell us to live scientifically. Trust science. That has the answer for you. We live in a scientific world, and today everything has to be evaluated, appraised, quantified. If you're in a job, you know that now. That's the way the world works. But I'm telling you today, that's not how we live. You can't put love under a microscope. You can't weigh it in a pair of scales. You can't see it fills a certain receptacle and say, well, that's love. God's love is like that too. We can't see it, but we can experience it. And here today on Mothering Sunday, as we think about all these things, I want to think about something so simple that I can't quantify. The fragrance even in a posy of flowers, but you smell those flowers. Take those flowers and hand them round. And I want each person just, you can't weigh this fragrance. You can't, I don't know if you can analyse it. Can you analyse it? Can you analyse that? Yeah. I know one thing about all this. There makes an update for everyone. As they say in the army, I'm your mother now, but am I? Your mother's Sarge. I just want everyone to take one of these, because even if you're not a mother, you might have a mother. Years ago, I did a Mothering Day service. And this old person took some flowers, and I thought, I'm sure her mother isn't alive. And some days later, as I took a visit to the cemetery, I noticed some lady's grave. You can do with these what you want. So as we think about this theme of Mothering Sunday today, to think about God's love, and how it is ever being revealed to us in the most wonderful ways. Everywhere. I want you to think that like the beauty of a flower, like its fragrance, like its delight, it's not something you can easily evaluate, but it's something you can smell and look at and experience and know. And that really is the message that Paul speaks to us, that God's love is just as powerful, just as potent, even though sometimes we can't see it.